So we will have Catherine Pope and Russell Thornhill, who are the co-directors of the Bridge program, and myself as the founding director of the Bridge program, in conversation about that program, which is from its beginning has dealt with issues of racial justice and the Antioch's undergraduate program's response to those issues. So it should be a really terrific, lively conversation, and hope that you can attend there. And then last bit of business, you see you're all muted, so please keep yourself muted until you've joined the conversation. That helps everybody here. And then if you have questions or comments or just ideas or resources that you want to share, please use the chat and put those in there. Rest assured that somebody will get around to saying, hey, would you like to come into the conversation? It is messy conversations, so this works best when people participate in the conversation. So don't be shy. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Rosa Garza-Mourino to get us started.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. As David mentioned, this is a Media Literacy Week, starts today. It's going to go on for the whole week. It's a US event. Many events are happening nationwide, and even the UNESCO related to Media Literacy Week. And first of all, I want to thank Mihi Hyun, our Dean of School of Undergraduate Studies, and Christina Forte. Because of your support, you two have believing in this idea of this Media Literacy Week, bringing it to Antioch, and then you supported it, and then we appreciate it, as well as our colleagues in the Messy Conversations for creating this space for us to interject a topic in the middle of the Messy Conversations, which is an important one related to media and elections and voter suppression. So adding participation in Media Literacy Week, and is something that Asa and I have been talking about constantly, is what we care about. It is so aligned to the mission of the university in terms of social justice. Media literacy is all about this creating this framework to understand the world where we are and how information affects others, how it influences the public discourse, and it's about inclusion and critical thinking. Part of our mission is precisely that. So we're very excited to be part of this. And one comment that also Asa and I have been talking about is that media literacy, unlike the old days, and by the old days I'm talking about the 90s, and then before the 90s, media literacy was like a pre-K or K-12 issue, and it was about how to consume information, how to not let the TV influence you that much, that kind of stuff. But right now we have a big transition. It's not about what we consume, media literacy anymore. It's also about how we inadvertently produce by sharing information that we didn't even create. So it's very sophisticated landscape where we are. So media literacy now is plural. Multiple literacies are needed to deal with this. And Media Literacy Week focuses on the aspects of that's their motto and their topics: access, analysis, evaluation, creation, and acting. So there's a combination of, like, all of us have that mission or something to do with those. So that's the reason we see the alignment with Antioch, and we are very proud to bring this here. With that, Asa, how did we come up with this idea of talking about this right now? Why?
Yeah, so thank you, Rosa, and I want to reiterate your thank yous to Messy Conversations and to Mihi and Christine. Essentially looking at some of it is with the calendar, right? So we were looking at the schedule, and we knew that the midterm elections were coming up. Now it's on 2 weeks from tomorrow, November 8th. And we saw Media Literacy Week in this time period, and kind of looking at the overlap of these issues, the upcoming elections, media literacy, and anti-racism efforts, the way these topics overlap with each other. And we are going to take an approach to this messy conversation that's a little bit different from if you're a regular, what you might be used to, where we have a conversation between some invited guests for 20, 30 minutes and then open it up. Rather, we really wanted this to be open conversation and really discussing this topic as a community. And so I hope, I did see Jacqueline in the chat, and that's great to hear. I hope you'll be a major part of this conversation as well. A couple of facts to kind of set the stage. We know that since the Voting Rights Act was pretty much gutted in 2013 by the Supreme Court, there have been major changes to voting law, a lot of efforts to suppress votes, especially of people of color and Black people in particular in some states. This has only been escalating election after election. In 2020, we had the best voter turnout in many years, but we still see major gaps. So 70.9% of eligible white voters voted in the 2020 election, and only 58% of non-white voters. There are a lot of reasons for this, obviously. Hopefully we'll get to some of that. And the way the media plays into all of this, and why media literacy is such a relevant topic, we think is pretty evident from our previous election cycle in 2020. So currently, according to some polls, about 35% of all voters believe that the 2020 election was illegitimate. That includes 65% of Republican voters. So we clearly have some major issues with truth and the media and presenting facts, and how we are able to navigate that landscape of social media, of the kind of fire hose of information that's being sprayed at all of us all the time, and that, as Rosa said, we are also a part of producing. That's kind of the framework that we wanted to approach this with. And so we have a few topic areas that we wanted to kind of bring up and hear from all of you about approaches you take, suggestions, or other problems and issues you've seen in this area. So Rosa, I'll give it back to you for the first topic.
Yeah. So the first topic that we would like to bring up and hear about your perspective on this in a moment, I just want to share a few statements about it, is in regard to the extreme polarization that media is playing a role in the polarization where we are living. So following up on what Asa was just saying, so we know that when you think about the intersections of the topics of media and elections, and media, sorry, excuse me, and elections are all about making your voice be out there, as well as having the outcome of whether your voice is going to be represented in the election's outcome. When you have these two aspects of the election, my voice and the results of my voice, when you have those and the media in the middle, you can see that the way media approaches this, or reports on this, or amplifies or not amplifies something, could be something that is going to be contributing to further inequality or marginalization, or ultimately how racism can be naturalized in the form of voter suppression when you look at this aspect of the potential of this. So we see that on both sides of this aspect of election as a voice, as a representation of the voice in an actual election results. You see that in both sides, minority face structural disadvantages like the ones that Asa described, like general, and then the historical aspects of having these illegal ways to exclude the voice and the representation in many ways. So polarization turns out to be a very effective way to keep conducting these insidious practices. You think about we're living in the attention economy. Okay, so the attention economy thrives from exaggeration, from fear-mongering, scandal, and anything that could attract traffic is great for business right now. It's a perfect way to attract business. So we are very worried about that. So if we agree that the media has, on the other side, as an original intent of the media, or the role of journalism is the essential contributor to inspire democratic practices in the public space. And then journalists supposed to have this code of ethics that involved being truthful, being accountable, fair, objective, and diligent in the process. So when we see that would be the expectation, we see that journalists may choose to expose or distort or conceal information related to election topics, and the issue of serving or not expectations of trust and public services, a choice that also journalists may do or not. So how to cover deception, obfuscation, or abuse, how and how journalists decide how to go about that, and how this contributes to the vote suppression and voting suppression, and affects the communities of color, ultimately, the most vulnerable to these processes that are so intricate and insidious. So my concern, that is not only mine, I would say our concern, because Ace and I have been preparing for this. Our concern is, even though inflammatory and information has always attracted attention, salaciousness and driving business, even though that has always been the case, in the current media ecosystem, this is where our main issue is right now. In the current media ecosystem, we now get the profits from the most extreme statements. So it's micro-targeting and isolating audiences that are already isolating, pitting them against each other by any means necessary, because that drives traffic and drives profits. And communities of color get involved in this in this political violence and further marginalization and isolation. So we would like to know, what do you think, guys, when it's about extreme issues, inflammatory issues, should journalists expose them? How they should expose them, or rather not amplify them? Because these are the choices. The choice is sunlighting them. That is the way you can look at it. Sunlight them and put them there in the open and let's see what happens. Or be way more strategic about when to expose things, and or actually choose to not amplify them altogether, like ignore them, don't give them oxygen, let them die in the competitive media ecosystem. So that would be one big issue that just pointing on it, like setting on the table for you guys to let us know what do you think about that, or what is your experience with it, or concern.
Well, I would like to offer that the twice impeached president set the tone for a lot of misbehavior by media. The idea that fact-checking and credible sources as a way of confirming a story or not confirming a story, or making a story available to be highlighted, as you said, Rosa, became a thing, and it has permeated since that time. And I don't know how many people may have seen the 60 Minutes piece on Dominion, the voter machine company, and how that lie that somehow the machines were connected to the internet, they were programmable so that they could add votes to Mr. Biden's column, or not for Trump. And this lie kept being echoed by Fox as an example. And even though that corporation sent them proof to substantiate the fact that they were incapable of doing that, Fox continued to put the lie out. And I'm saying this as an example that a lot of news outlets, just like Fox, they all now lean on the First Amendment right. And that is a problem because they can continue to perpetuate a lie or a sensational factor or non-fact. And they can be sued, of course, but they still fall on the idea that it's their First Amendment right to say what they say. Unlike, as you said, back in the day, when I myself worked as a journalist, we had to be able to check the facts, even though it may have been a hard news item coming from Associated Press or wherever we got our facts from. It still had to be, substantiated before you could put it out to the public. Those days are gone. And so, that's just one example with the whole Trump versus First Amendment right versus Fox and other outlets that don't feel like they need to tell the truth.
Thank you, Clarence. Thank you for that.
Yes, and I think just to kind of reiterate this example, because I think it fits really well, as does so many things related to Donald Trump. It's obviously a major figure in this. He was a media figure, before he was a political figure. And this question of sunlight as the best disinfectant versus deplatforming, not giving space to certain ideas in the mainstream media, you can see it so clearly in how Donald Trump won his election, that he commanded so much media attention because of the outrageousness, of course, and kind of there were things he would say that were intended just to get attention, and it blew up on social media. These were the things people clicked on, and I'm guilty myself. I'm still reading articles about Donald Trump all the time because it commands our attention. So when we think about how should journalists approach this, and how can we as informed citizens kind of make sure we're not falling victim to certain being taken in by this attention economy that's profit driven at the end of the day, right? The goal is not civic democracy, it's profit for media companies.
But let me dovetail on
interesting.
that again.
I'm sorry.
Just simply saying that the idea of this whole voter machine, Dominion Fox situation, this is how the suppression piece comes in, because it breeds voter distrust. And so therefore there's a large population of people who then are fearful of voting. And then of course you have the base, the Trump base and the MAGNA base that will vote because they know it's a lie. But you've got other people, other populists who believe that, well, maybe my vote is not going to count because this machine is going to destroy my vote, or it's not going to be properly reported. And that is the form of suppression that happens in that instance.
You know what? It was funny that Clarence mentioned that, because I was just getting ready to say that, because, there's always been a population that don't believe in the system. There's always been a population that goes out there and says, voting doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter. That's always existed, especially when you look at marginalized communities. When they think about taking the time, taking the day off, which that's another issue of giving days off for voting that has been put forth, giving people the time to go in and voice their opinion, don't feel that their opinion is heard. Then you look at that combined with the fact that these untruths and the media as it stands right now, and excuse me if I'm wrong, because my mom was a journalist for over 50 years, shows how old I am. The reason why she did not feel comfortable with continuing in the efforts of journalism is because of the way it has veered. You think about those times within the 70s and the 60s and, you know, other decades where investigative journalism was searching for the truth and revealing that truth to us and putting that information forward. And like you said, Asa, now it's become the highest ratings, the most time, the most clicks. And it's changed a little bit when it comes to what is being offered to us as a consumer of the news. And we have to really go out of our way in order to find out what we need to know to make the right choice. And that to me is the part that is so detrimental to this topic, mingled with the fact that people are not only are you being intimidated by the news and by the media, but then you're physically intimidated by going to the voter booth and having someone taking your picture and having someone that's armed sitting in the parking lot. There's a different feeling of where we are right now, and it's going to be very unique to try to find our way back to the truth, because now we have a new quote unquote normal. And I don't know if you can address that. How are we supposed to get back to that journalism that said, you know, they were in this room and they found these documents and Nixon should have probably resigned, but he was a part of the whole thing. When are we going to get back to that kind of coverage so that the American public can be well informed?
Yes, thank you, Jacqueline. I feel there's many different directions we could go in, and I wanted to note the comments from both David and Mihi in the chat about the blurring of the line between news media and entertainment, and then about the fairness doctrine, or allowing, you know, equal amounts of time for political speech in the media. And I would have to mention like the Citizens United ruling which, you know, basically did that blurring of the line and said political speech is not really regulatable, and money can go towards making political comments on airwaves, public airwaves, as long as, you know, the very basic minimum rules are followed. So it does seem like there's a little bit of a cat out of the bag. Like, not sure how we go back to a time where media was so different, where it was much more uniform in what you knew you were looking at. Like, this is a newspaper, this is, you know, a entertainment piece. When you throw in social media and the fact that most people even get their legacy journalism through social media streams, and it becomes much more difficult to kind of apply that older model, I would say. I'm curious if others had thoughts around that, as well as I wanted to mention that the next topic we had in mind was that idea that both of you raised of this apathy that's created through this whole issue. Like, when people even hear about voter suppression and hear about the voter fraud and all of that, like, it just creates this backlash or an apathy as like, this isn't really speaking to me. I don't feel reflected in this at all in what I'm seeing. So I can check out a bit, you know. And there are lots of different factors to that issue as well, including like the very rigid bipartisan nature of our political system, where you basically only have two choices in every election. That's where I'm at, but I'm wondering if others have thoughts.
Well, I don't feel very coherent. Everything's sort of spinning around in my head, and I keep getting these different images. I mean, it's so complex and it's so disturbing, but I don't know if people know, but some like 10 years ago or something, Fox News applied for a license in Canada and was denied on the grounds that in Canada, they have a law that you have to tell the truth, basically, in the news. And that's an oversimplification. I don't have all the details in my head from having read that article, but Fox News didn't meet the criteria. And I thought, wow, I wonder, and I know we have the First Amendment and we're a different legal system than Canada, but it's like, that's kind of a nice image to have. But then I also know that in this era of social media and everything, I just don't know how you control things anymore. Like, do you really need a license? But Fox News has certainly done a lot of damage in the last 10 years. And then another thing that I remember not too long ago, there was an article, and I don't remember the details. It was either the New York Times or the Washington Post, and it was basically critiquing Jared Kushner for something, calling him to task. And it was fine. It's kind of going along. And then suddenly they brought in Hunter Biden, and it was like they were making a parallel. And I was just incensed. It's like, there is no parallel here, because what the article was, the headline was kind of holding leaders accountable. Or something. And I thought Hunter Biden is not a leader. The only parallel there is that they were both sons of a president or a former president. Otherwise, there's no parallel. And I thought that was particularly poor journalism for the likes of the Washington Post and the New York Times. And then the last thing that's swirling around in my head is, I don't know if any of you saw the clip. I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday, but in Florida, where they're going and to the homes of former felons who have registered to vote. And there was a clip that kind of went viral of a former felon who's being arrested. And I guess it was the video cam from the officers. And they were not unreasonable in the moment, because they were basically acting on an arrest warrant. But the guy kept saying, "What have I done?" And they just say, "Well, there's a warrant out for your arrest for voting when you're not allowed to." And it's like, I mean, the guy was clearly like, "I haven't done anything." And I don't even know if he'd voted, but I heard that a lot of those cases were thrown out. But he had to go in. He was and go through the formal kind of arrest process, because apparently you have to prove intent to commit voter fraud. You can't just say, but it was someone who he'd been outreach to when the laws changed in Florida to allow felons to vote. And so, some outreach happened to reach out to groups who'd been disenfranchised. And so he'd signed up to be able to vote. And then the law changed again. I mean, it's just, but I was like, wow, I was surprised there wasn't more response to that. And maybe it's just like with everything, there are just so many outrageous things going on. But to watch that video of someone being arrested in this country, not even who had actually committed fraud, but, someone found his name on a roll as an ex-felon who then also had registered to vote since then, even though he'd been legally able to at the time. Just seemed outrageous. So as I say, these are just things floating around in my head, but.
Andrea?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, a lot of people's apathy, in my experience, is that they don't understand voting and the voting process. And I actually teach that in my math class and have them, find articles that make different predictions and then kind of dive into where did it come from. And I find that, they find sites they never knew existed and they're a little horrified. And so we have those conversations. But this summer, I had them vote, and I just said, just vote. And we had 5 different methods of voting. And then we saw the outcomes, and I'm like, all right, now you're going to vote on a different topic, and I want you to win. And the people understood that, oh, so I do this, you vote against this, as opposed to just being like, I don't care. They were actively against, and it changed the way. And then they were like, why are people not educated? And this one guy's like, I've never voted in my life. I didn't realize it mattered. And so it was just like, there was just kind of, they didn't understand the process and they didn't know why, especially in California. It doesn't matter. You don't have to, so that. And then they were a little horrified about how much power, because this one student in the class was able to like make all the things he wanted to win, because it was we were doing cumulative voting and approval voting and stuff. And he's like, I didn't realize how much power you could have if you just get, a certain constituency. And then we were talking about like how does one party or another use their power in a way to push their agenda, because the other side may be split. And so that, you know, and how the media kind of can get people together on a particular issue and make it seem like it's a yes, no, as opposed to all the shades of gray. And so, yeah, they were a little horrified about how much they didn't know. And these were not, you know, 18-year-olds, right? So they were a little horrified. And then we had the conversation about how people who don't have access to that information, they're not being trained to be critical thinkers necessarily in this kind of context, and how marginalized they become because, you know, they just are unaware of what their voice could be.
Thank you, Andrea and Sue.
That did, before we move on from the apathy piece too much, that did remind me, Andrea, of like one other issue we wanted to kind of bring in, this idea of a local focus, like a local elections, and the importance of the kind of down ballot elections that tend to get completely overshadowed by the big national issues and these kind of larger grand narratives. And, you know, when you were talking about the surprise of, oh, I can really actually have a lot of power if I just push on this one little piece here, you know, we see that a lot. And the media coverage, you know, our media systems have become a lot more global, like globally focused, and there's been an erosion of local journalism. Local newspapers have closed in recent years, and with almost all coverage being tied into these larger national narratives that tend to put people into these camps or view people as you know, just your racial identity as like, oh, you're a Black voter, you vote Democrat, rather than like school board issues or, you know, issues that affect directly your neighborhood and community, which don't really fit into those media narratives.
When Isa and I were talking about these local versus national issues, we were talking about how the national issues create this tribalism or rallying about a very abstract things when you neglect, when the space that is void about your local community is so removed from you that you don't even know what's going on in your backyard. And the things that need to be addressed that are important, vital for you, your family, your community, really vital, and they are totally neglected. So it's by totally neglected, I just mean that compared to the national attention that we're paying to the issues that are fear mongering that is happening at national issues level, patriotism, for example.
Is it me, or does it seem like they're making it more difficult to keep up with the local information because of the amount of information that they're pushing at you? Like I could tell you Prop 26, I could tell you Prop 27, but then if I have a pothole issue in my immediate neighborhood, I don't see anything on the ballot on that, and it's kind of hard to like hone it down where you have to, you as a individual have to have the time to sit down and find the information. You have to go through the sites and do a lot of reading. They don't have as many commercials for that as they do for things that are supposed to affect, let's say, the whole state of California or wherever you might be in a sister city. So it does make it a little bit more difficult.
almost like Jacqueline saw our agenda or something.
Uh-huh.
Because this issue of advertising and the money behind. Yeah, that was where we're going next.
That's what I'm stepping into right now, Jacqueline. So you are just on topic. Wow. Okay. So I want to quote this quote for you guys. Political ad spending overall during 2022 cycle is projected to reach a record setting of 9.7 billion, smashing the previous midterm year record of 4 billion, and even surpassing the 9 billion record set during the 2020 presidential cycle. And this is according to one of the respected sources that is Ad Impact, that is tracking political spending specifically. So it's more than double the spending right now on political advertising than it was in the 2020 election. So the stakes are high because there's this focus on defending the House or taking over the House in the Senate. And the government, in swing states, there's most of the spending is happening obviously in the swing states. So that is bringing us to this idea that, okay, money influences elections, and in the US where attention economy is thriving, and profit and for profit is above other considerations. So this applied to the elections is really having an influence on others. Not everybody can influence elections with their bank account. So there's a lot of silencing here of communities that cannot pay for their elected officials like others do. So it creates this dramatic inequality that we have been observing as well, as the direction that Jacqueline Rose was going with the argument. And here the concern, how can communities who face economic challenges be able to buy representation in a system that is already designed to make it difficult to buy political advertising for anyone that doesn't have the means to do that? So what do you think about the role of money in the US elections?
Well, I offer that basically where we are right now in the 21st century at this time in 2022, in terms of reaching the voter, it's almost like teaching. You have to meet your students where they are. So it's been, concluded that in order to reach the voter, you've got to do it through broadcast media, because more people are watching television, more people are relying on their internet streams and their social media for their information. So those are the strategic outlets that are used to attract or to get the attention of a voter. Now, someone like, let's use our local election in Los Angeles as an example, for those of you who are in Los Angeles. We have a gentleman running for mayor here who is basically a multi-billionaire. He, in order to get name recognition and name ID, he has literally spent hundreds of millions of dollars in his campaign in local television commercials. He, of course, spent more money for the name ID, but a part of that money has been to do a smear campaign on his opponent, who is an elected official, who has a credible reputation, been a public servant for many, many years. So in using that example, you see how voters can be scared into thinking that what his ads are saying are actually true. I actually had a friend to visit me the other day. I was a little taken aback because she bought into one of the ads, the ad that he's using around Scientology, that tries to imply that Karen Bass is a proponent or a supporter of Scientology in some kind of way. And I had to let my friend know that, hey, she's a politician. She showed up for the ribbon cutting just like every other politician did that day, but they have footage of her speaking. So he's been able to secure and use that particular moment to say, oh, she's a supporter of Scientology. So just like in some of the other states, you see like incumbents running for governor again, and they know that guns and violence is like a part of the concerns of that particular municipality. So they're doing these ads with guns, with live guns on air in these ads. So it's all about the sensationalism and drawing in those 60 seconds, those 30 seconds, the biggest visual, because it's a visual media, the biggest visual attack to pull that consumer in to try to impact their decision on the campaign. And the person, like you said earlier, who can spend the most is going to have the biggest impact, whether it's positive or negative.
Thank you so much, Clarence, also for the local focus. Speaking of the local, that is here happening right now. Thank you so much. But I would like to add something. When we talk about the kinds of platforms that the ones that Clarence described, where people get the information, there is a brand new trend, pretty alarming, guys. So I don't want to contribute, but it's part of the analysis. This is a pretty new thing that's happening in the last year, more and more prominently right now is getting amplified. That is the use of CTV, connected digital TV. We're talking about Roku or any other of those devices to streamline in order to target the voters right there. So you probably started to see that in your Roku or Apple or whatever it is that you stream things, advertising targeting you specifically, and this is not just contributing to the very noisy environment where we are, and the mental health issues that you want to associate with that. This is almost untraceable to know how these people are harvesting information from us. So now tracing the harvesting of our human data became so prominent during the 2016 election and Cambridge Analytica and stuff like that, that ever since there have been enormous efforts to tackle that, track it. There are organizations that are really incessantly working on this and regulation, stuff like that. So we're not as doomed as it feels really in many ways. So, and I would like to insist on that later when responding to me his point, right? But I want to tell that there's no regulation yet for this other brand new form of harvesting. So that is the one thing that is concerning right now. So the political ads and the targeting is happening like let's call it under the radar right now of regulation or any way that we could know that is being traced, the data, and solved. We're not talking only about privacy, but we're talking about the idea of exploiting and abusing us as consumers, like in the open, just blatantly. So, yeah. So
yeah, I'll just add that because this is one area where we might be able to look across the ocean, because in the EU they are dealing with this issue more directly. There doesn't seem to be any movement around this in the US quite yet around regulating targeted advertisements based on data collection, which is what we're talking about, right? In the EU, there are two proposed laws that really look closely at this, at digital marketing, and it's called the EU Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act, the EU Digital Markets Act, which would make it illegal to target advertising based on certain factors. So based on race or ethnicity, based on political views, sexuality. So there are some categories where they say you can't collect that information and then target ads based on those categories. I think it will be hard to put that in place, but it's something like that we can think about, or think about how you can regulate that sort of economy and the way it works. And I think maybe this is where could also talk about the major news story that happened in the past couple of weeks here in LA. I know this has been very LA focused, but this leaked audio recording of just really horrific racist comments, and this conversation that was kind of a peek behind the curtains of this process of gerrymandering and redistricting the city, where it seemed that city council members were basically chopping up the city into racial categories and then making decisions based on that. So we can see it like happening at all these different levels in the political system, but the advertising piece of that is a little bit more hidden. We don't quite see it because it's the algorithm that we don't have a leaked recording of it, right? So there are lots of ways that leaked recording intersects with this conversation. And, when it happened, we were like, this is kind of overlaps a lot with the media literacy, right? Like that conversation happened a year ago. How did it get out now? And what are the motivations of putting it out? We don't know how it came out. So when we talk about media literacy and like tracing your sources, it's difficult with that one. And then that's not to overlook the actual content of that conversation, which I think was very instructive, which also leads into that apathy piece, right? Because we can see it kind of, I think for a lot of people, it maybe solidified an assumption they already had about how politicians operate, right? And that it is corrupt, and that there's nothing we can do about it, basically. Not to be too negative, but
Yeah.
Me myself, I don't think there is anything that can be done about it because they have that data, based just on the mailings that I receive. I am a white Midwestern Republican who is strong in her beliefs of family and faith, and that puts me in a category where I'm getting some mail that's very interesting, and and they look handwritten. So if they've been targeting me as that individual for more than 10 years, and I haven't lived in the Midwest for quite some time, I think it's very unique that they're able to draw down based upon, I don't know, what information, data that they're getting on us, whether it's our credit score that's pushing me this way, whether it's where I live that's pushing me that way, whether it's the district or the way that the jobs that I have that's pushing you away. You never know what's pushing you into this target demographic, and yet that information just comes at you 110%, and you can't stop it because they have your data, they have your information, they have your mailing, they can text you, they can email you, and there's no way, without the extent of, at least for myself, I report everything to the FBI. If somebody's following me for too long, but I think there's no way to really cut it off and say, this is not me, or this is me, and I want more. You don't really have the control that you think you should as an individualized voter. And that's the part that is scary, because you can't make a choice. You can't change it, even if they've tagged you one way or the other.
I have an example like this. After an interesting discussion during Trump's term in class, I made the mistake of signing up for his website so I could read some of what was posted there. And, immediately unsubscribed like a week later, but I got so many emails. And no matter how many times I unsubscribed, it still came, all these different bot addresses. I'm still getting them. I also had people using my credit cards to buy guns in the South at various locations. I have been receiving advertisements for camouflage, hunting gear, and whoever is attached to this, whatever their interests are, I think I'm getting it because these are not things I was searching for on Google. But to your point, I wonder, when does it stop and how much time do you put in, especially when you have to pay for extra storage of email if you're not on top of deleting all that garbage, then how much of a time suck is it to just understand viewpoints or attempt to understand viewpoints? I'm not sure that's anything that was actually happening, but just being curious has consequences.
Hi, David.
Hi, there's so many great issues out there on the table right now. I'm not sure which ones to pick up on. So I'll say a couple of things quickly. One is just, I think somewhere down the road, we're going to look back on these days as the good old days. I'm absolutely certain that this is true. And that's because of advances in technology, and we could spend a week just talking about all of those reasons: AI, deepfakes, all of the stuff that's coming and will be here soon enough. All the stuff you've already talked about in terms of algorithms, and how that influences us, and the creation of an ever larger irreality that we're living in. And I think about in our educational foundations course in LA, we have students read a little bit of Hannah Arendt. And Hannah Arendt is talking in that piece about the importance of a public sphere. And part of the definition of the public is a place where we're all seeing and hearing the same things. That's what constitutes reality. If we're not seeing and hearing the same things, then we don't have a shared reality. And in the past, people would get elected, or measures would pass, and that I'm disappointed in that, but we'll get them next time. Now it's become an existential threat. And so the stakes are so high, and without a common public sphere for us to be banging our heads together and trying to understand and to make choices, and the ongoing fire hose of information and misinformation that's aimed at us continuously, I think these are going to be the good old days.
Thank you, David, for the reminder of the public space, how it is built. One of the reasons this topic was connected so clearly to media literacy, or the value of media literacy, because there are elements within this powerlessness feeling that we are left when we think about these issues. There are still room for some engagement from us with the information in different ways that we have done before, and how we connect to the the mechanisms that create policy and the mechanisms that apply rules. So there is not it's not that we don't have that opportunity. It's just that the responsibility is falling on our lap so suddenly that we cannot just ignore it right now. It's the urgency is here. There's lots of interesting things that can be done, but need involvement from all of us, from the community, and from like the universities have this important role. Like English class is wonderful, we need it. Math, we need it. But media literacy is becoming like another aspect of it that is so urgent to have. So that's why it's so important for us to keep thinking about how can we equip ourselves and students with ways to look at these issues without letting the intimidating context that we're living to crush us. Try to find outlets to something, right? For example, constructive dialogue. We can think about constructive dialogue and like I think about censorship, for example. Should we eradicate free speech because it offends people? And then you have all the cancel culture issue. That is a huge conversation about what do we do with that. So we need to be able to talk about it without being triggered. And how do we do that? I never received training to how to do that. So I've been teaching myself how to don't let these things trigger us, and how to share that with students, right? As part of my classes, breaking down the overwhelming amount of information, learning to break it down using critical thinking skills that all of us have. If we teach at Antioch or our students in Antioch, we know how to start to be or be critical thinkers. So that application of those principles help break things down and look at one issue at a time and see what is the opportunity there to engage, have a conversation about it. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I just wanted one piece that I think we've been talking a lot, and I know it's 5 now, so yes, but we kept coming back to, and I think it kind of it seems a bit like skirting these issues or avoiding them, but that you know, it's not dealing with the reality of the false news and the misconceptions that people have and the lies and all that, but looking at the structure of the media itself. This is what like media literacy is all about, and saying, okay, there's this profit-driven surveillance capitalist model that we have for all of our media. It doesn't seem to be going well. It doesn't seem to be leading us in a good direction. Like, maybe if we kind of cut that off at the root, right? So it's like, try to do everything we can to make sure that that sort of model for operating media is no longer possible, that it's not driven by surveilling every citizen and then targeting them with advertisements based on what you learned through surveilling them. If we can do away with that, maybe these other things start falling into place a bit more, and we can have a shared reality again. That's I was stretching for a hopeful place to go. After David, these are the good old days.
Yeah, well, as Mark pointed out, the good old days aren't what they used to be. I want to acknowledge that it is after 5. We try to formally wrap up around 5. We want to thank Rosa and Asa for bringing this topic to the table. Hoping that you all can hang out, for those who want to hang out and talk a little further about some of these issues, perhaps more informally. That would be fantastic. And then next week, it's going to be a terrific conversation, really lively, with Catherine and Russ and myself about the Bridge program. If you don't know about the Bridge program, that'll give you a chance to learn something. As one effort that Antioch's undergraduate programs have supported now for over 2 decades, as a way of addressing some of the racial inequalities in higher education. So it's a 2-for-1 Monday. So you get in free and a friend. So bring a friend, and everybody gets in free next Monday. And it'd be great to see everybody. And for now, we'll continue informally as long as there is interest in the conversation. And maybe I'd like to pick up on what you were just saying, Asa, that so much of this is the business model that we're currently operating under for social media and media more in a larger context. And as long as there's profit to be made in the algorithms and data mining and all of this, then that's going to continue. And as I know you and Rosa are both well aware, there's suggestions out there that an alternate model would be to pay for what we use. So subscription-based models rather than deep mining of data. And I wonder what you guys think of that suggestion, that rather than yeah. And I see Mark has a hand up. So.
Yeah, I don't know if Mark.
Go ahead, answer. I think that's a good question, David. Thank you.
There's the really common phrase that probably people have heard of, like if the product is free to use, you're the product. Like the product is actually your data, and you're not a customer. Actually, the customer is the advertisers who are buying that data. So you're just actually the product being sold. I do think that is really important to move away from that. They say, we'll give you this service as long as we can, give you this 10-page contract you're not going to read. You click the button, and now we own everything we can get about you in terms of information. That definitely does not seem to benefit anyone except the companies themselves. I don't know what the alternate model is, though. I think thinking about information about people as kind of an extension of the person itself. This gets really abstract, but there are people who have like legal theories rooted in this, that like information about you is part of you, and you have a right to it, and you have a right to control it. So in the EU, for instance, there's a law that the right to be forgotten. You can tell Google, get my information off of your website. I own that. That's me. Obviously if you're a famous public figure, you can't do that. But there's certain information that you have a right to because it's you. So I think changing our thinking more towards that. But I don't know what it looks like policy.
Thank you, Isa. Mark?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to just say I really enjoyed that conversation, and I appreciate Asa and others wanting us to have some sense of hope around this. I think we have to have that, or it's just there is no way forward. But I realize that some things are just so deeply embedded, and we live in a society in which it seems to be perfectly okay to have the healthcare system primarily be about making money as opposed to making people healthy and supporting that. So some very basic things just immediately get tossed into that capitalist model, and often really the worst version of it. So why not our elections, right? I don't mean to sound so cynical, but I'm an old enough fart to remember back in the days when there was something called civics, and I'm not trying to say it was done well, but the degree to which most of the population doesn't understand how government can work or should work, or why voting is important, or what the public sphere could be all about, it means we have a good portion of our population not understanding some really fundamental things that might be leveraged for change. To even ask questions that doesn't occur to someone if they don't know. So my mind partly goes to we're an education institution. I realize this was about media, but what can education institutions do to help this situation out? Some of it is talking about the media and the messages you get. I no doubt, but also about government, because the messages are about government and our governance. I'm just some thoughts. They're pretty incoherent, so sorry about that. But I think this is so fundamental. Some of the problems we have right now absolutely need to be addressing at several levels of this, and I just don't know where to start. Maybe this is one place that we have a little bit of leverage. Anyway, I'll stop. Thanks for letting me
Thank you.
ramble on.
Thank you, Mark. Well, just let me add one piece here to this part of the conversation, which is one of the propositions by some scholars and people that follow and trace and monitor the ecosystem of the media. They came with the radical ideas. One of them, solutions. One of them is to separate politicians or political information itself, like from what would be considered more like a social hanging out kind of spaces. So start with this separation. Don't let it be coexist. Like don't use the same, because then it gets the argument is that it gets so easily to disguise your agenda and biases there. That is more okay. This is a social space for socializing, for hanging out, for connecting to each other. Okay, let's separate that one from the ones that want to play with the big dogs. You want to play with the big dogs, then you know what is gonna waiting for you with the big dogs. It will be a political stream system where people go there in and out and at their own risk. But this idea that suddenly just because you're participating in this digital version of the public space, suddenly you become used and abused without consent. So that's the part that needs to be addressed every time we think about solutions. So I just give you an example, that radical one, because I heard it from folks from the MIT and from Harvard.
I'll add one more of the efforts around anti-monopolization, anti-monopoly and antitrust, where, you know, when the telephone companies monopolized and there was one system that was basically the only system in America, the US government said, no, we're going to take that because it's too important to our democracy, too important to society to, you know, let a single for-profit company control this. And it seems to me that systems like Facebook and Twitter are at that level where the government could step in and say, this is an essential tool for communication today. There needs to be democratic oversight of it. And so we're taking it, you know, that's a kind of radical, you know, government seizing it. But that I think it also does go to the civic issue. This is where it starts getting a bit chicken and egg, where like we now tend to view companies as governance, that like when there's so many issues here, but when we think about moderation, content moderation by these companies, you'll see people appealing to the company as if it's a government, as if we have a say, and it's that they're not beholden to a board of directors who want a profit, right? Like they don't care if we have a say or not, like, or what we think is right for this platform. That's the difference between private and public, and like those things seem to be really blurred now, that you know, we don't view government as like as something we're proud of and like take ownership over. Rather, we're like, I DM'd the CEO of Twitter, and like, yeah, exactly. consumers.
Consumers first, yeah. And thank you for the mention of the health system, Mark, as well, because I think it's the only country in the world that has for-profit business model applied to health industry. And once you profit with that, you can profit with any.
You know, it's also interesting too that those laws that would have prevented us from sitting here and having this conversation were attempted by previous administrations and always voted against. We're sitting here because of the votes that we do make and the votes that we don't make. And when I think about the fact that I am forced to unsubscribe, and I am forced as an individual citizen to tell you not to sell my information when the information belongs to me, those things were on the table as far as not being something that you could do, not being something that a company could do. And it is really unfathomable that the entities, the companies, the media have decided that we are the commodity without our acceptance of it. And that to me is the craziest part. That's the craziest part. I don't know.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if we should wrap up. I know it's 15 over, but we should keep talking about this. I'll stick around, but thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Just recognizing.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. This is not a cheery subject, but it is really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, I'm heading out. Thanks so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mark. Shall we wrap? It's mostly the planning committee.
Yeah, we could.
Jacqueline and Jennifer.
Jacqueline.
Now, former
Yeah,
planning
comment.
committee person.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, always welcome.
So you got that stink on you.
Right, I guess.
Mhm.
Let
I
me
got
just,
perfume, don't worry about it.
I just want to say that I think this was very